recently wrote a book entitled Confessions of a Wall Street Whiz Kid. I gave it a really good read, and there's a fascinating story in there. Now, when you wrote it, you said, I think it might have been in the foreword, you said something to the effect of how you were the least likely person to be labeled a Wall Street Whiz Kid. How come? I mean, you didn't go to college, like, what happened?
Right, I was a warehouse manager. I never finished high school. I started to dabble in stocks because a guy I met where I worked. I turned a small amount of money into large trading options only to lose it to a broker. And in 1984, without any training, I became a stockbroker. By 1987, I was forecasting a crash that happened. And by 1995, I reached the American dream. I had what many would consider then all the money you needed to live a happily ever after. But I was also the president and chairman and CEO of the Me, Myself, and I Society. And I was taking the 10 commandments and making them the 10 suggestions and picking and choosing which ones to listen to.
Sure.
I battled depression. I've gone through a lot of ups and downs. I've made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, made a lot of money, lost a lot of money. And so typically when you think of people see Wall Street, Wharton School, Harvard guy, success, big boats, down at the yacht club. I'm a blue collar guy working in a white collar environment, so that's why I was probably the least likely guy to fall in the position that I did.
So your father was a gambler. To what extent did his, obviously, penchant for gambling, you're working on Wall Street, there's got to be a connection there.
There was. My father never had Shylocks knocking on the door, but he never had really savings until his last 10 years of life. And I probably inherited that because this is gambling, junior resources. See, Wall Street created this word speculating, so they don't have to use the word gambling.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're both the same thing. And there's a tendency for me to do that. I like the idea of trying to turn $1 into $5 or $10. But the problem on Wall Street is there are a lot of people gambling with other people's money. And then the big problem is they don't get to actually lose it because if they do real bad, government bails them out. They don't have to pay for their own mistakes. And that's the real bad thing about Wall Street, that you can gamble with other people's money and not pay a price for it.
Now, there seemed to be this underlying theme in the book about your father. And you talk a little bit about the last conversation you had with him, which I read that and I had to close the book and put it down because it was so profound. Tell me what he told you, the last conversation you had.
The last night before he would pass away, he basically told me why I was unfortunately abused as a child fairly bad. He hinted that he committed adultery, like he was telling me, don't do this with your wife, out of like, oh, you must have done it with yours. Walked out of my house, came back, thought he forgot something, kissed me, which I don't even remember my father ever kissing me, let alone. And then the next morning he passed away. And so it was a very profound effect, and it took a while to understand it and all. But one of the things he taught me in the end is, and I kind of tie it into this business, is it's no crime being wrong in investing, it's staying wrong. And thankfully in my father's last days and hours, he didn't commit that ultimate crime. He realized his mistakes, he sought forgiveness, and that's all we can do, no matter what faith or non-faith you're in. If you can appreciate and start to forgive and understand that forgiveness is really not for the person you're forgiving, it's for you. And so that was an ability to me to get past what happened as I was a child. And so my thoughts now of my father, or when I speak about him, or to my daughter and all, is of the good things that my father brought me, not the bad. And if you can get that hatred and jealousy and envy out of your heart, which for the most part I think I have in my last years, it's an easier way to live.
Now, there are a million more questions I could ask you about the book, but the way I want to wrap this is everyone who's here at this show is probably likely here because they want to accumulate wealth. They want to be rich. That's why they're here. You were rich, and yet you downsized your life. What do you know that many of these people don't know?
Well, I downsized it because I was going through the first of two really real battles of depression, point to where I didn't even want to live anymore. So I hope people don't have to get to that point to realize that. But there was a big lie that's been kind of Wall Street and Madison Avenue are put together. They've convinced society that more money equals more happiness. If you watch all the advertisement, you come with us, you get all the things you want. That's the big lie. If it was just a matter of accumulating dollars, we wouldn't have Hollywood people committing suicide and, drugs and all that type of stuff. The falsity is that money is a god. And in my faith, in the Christian faith, that's what we were warned about, that you can't serve two gods. And I used to say God was my, money was my God. And so what I could say to people is, it's okay, and if you are blessed with more wealth, you truly have more of an obligation to help others. And that's kind of where I've stayed focused in my life now, trying to serve others other than myself. Because like I said earlier, there was no one more than the chairman and CEO of the Me, Myself, and I Society than me. And I think that's what we got to get away. And unfortunately, money It's a hard habit to break. Worse than any drug or alcohol you can take, the desire for money.
Well, I think it's a fantastic message. It was a really good book. I really enjoyed reading it and would recommend it to anyone. So anyway,
Thank you,
listen,
John.
thanks very much for joining us, and look forward to the next show having you here.
Thank you. God bless.
All right.